For weeks, we've been offense, offense, offense. Well, the pads are going on, and now we're going to learn about the defense.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Also, this year, just to give you a heads up, we are going to be partnering with SiriusXM. I'll let you know where to find David Kellum and the Ole Miss home team broadcast every single Saturday. Also, today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right team faster and for free for your team. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Hope everybody has a pretty good Monday. As we all know, it's difficult to have a really good Monday. We're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball and get to know a couple of the transfers real quick. But first, I do want to let you know about our Discord server. We're having open enrollment at the moment, all during the month of August, to where you can go in and sign up. Starting September 1st, it will become a private board. It's a little bit more sophisticated than a message board, and it's a little bit intimidating, but if you stick with it and learn how to do it, it does work. It is threadable and stuff like that. So we will have that. That's our Discord server, Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. It's open enrollment throughout the month of August. We do appreciate it. Anyway, like I said, my name is Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. And, you know, we've talked about offense for months. Jackson Dart, Michael Trigg, Quinshon Judkins, Trey Harris, Zachary Franklin, Aiden Williams. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but we always kind of matriculate to that side of the ball. Well, pads go on today. I believe pads go on today. And with that happening, the defense is going to start to show its teeth a little bit. And with all the new players that Ole Miss has, it's a pretty wide range of variables that could happen. And one of the variables is it could be a pretty good defense. I think this defense will be better than last season. It's like I said, there's no such thing as a good football player. There's only a good football player there's a football player that does something well. So if you have a good cornerback, not everybody is going to be a good zone quarterback and a good man-to-man cornerback. So if you have a bunch of good zone cornerbacks, which I think Davidson Igbinosun was, by the way, a good zone cornerback, you need to find somebody that can man up, do man-to-man, and play the game. And Ole Miss is having to change out its defensive unit to go from one system to the next to get the best possible potential for them to succeed. One of those players that they brought in is Daijahn Anthony. And I've told everybody to pay attention whenever a player receives a single-digit number, that tells you what the staff thinks of this player. Just right off the bat, they still have to prove themselves in practice, but after first impressions, that's the way it goes. And Daijahn Anthony was giving number 3. And it's kind of interesting. Let's hear what he says.
Well, we've been it's day 3, so we still like learning a lot, and we getting better day in and day out. So just brick by brick, day by day, we're gonna get better, and this gonna be one of the strongest DB back ends that Ole Miss had in a long time. Princeman, real brother. That's really locked in. I'm gonna be over top of him. I like when he down press man. I like him a lot. We got a good relationship, and he got a good relationship with everybody. He, like, you feel me? When people came in, he take them in like everybody else do. It's like all one family. I like going up against. I got 2 answers for that. Shiftiness, I'm gonna go with. I like going against JJ and J Watt. They real shifty, and they gonna give you a lot of good bump. And then tall and jump balls, I'm gonna go with Trigg. because Trey going to try to go get it, and I'm going to jump over him every time.
Yeah, that is Daijahn Anthony. And it like I said, he's wearing number 3. He's obviously talking about playing safety. He's playing over the top of DeAndre Prince. And he's obviously getting a lot of playing time there. So it's expected that he is going to be a starter that will win one of those 3 safety positions. So we will see what he does. I'm pretty fired up about that. That is one of the things that, whenever you meet these guys, whenever you hear them speak, honestly, for the first time, you wonder how it's going to come across. Daijahn came through with flying colors. He's a guy that honestly seems at home, for lack of a better word. And he's somebody that's obviously developing chemistry with DeAndre Prince. That's good for the back end of the defense. You have one player that's going to be on the outside and somebody that is going to be responsible for a lot of over the top. If there's miscommunications, if there's communications problems, all of a sudden you can have a busted coverage and have a wide open receiver running down the sideline. These two developing chemistry, I think it will come in handy as well. Now, another transfer that Ole Miss brought in was Jean Baptiste, and he's a linebacker that's competing with like Centurion Perkins and Kari Coleman and Monty Montgomery and Ashanti Seastrunk and those guys. And they have some work too. Man, there's so much dang depth on this team of people that played FBS football last year. It's amazing. Now, everybody wants to look at the warts that Ole Miss's defense has or offense has and all the transfers, and they ask questions. They look for anything that could possibly go wrong. But if you just look at the per player talent that is on this roster, there is a ton of FBS snaps. Anyway, this is Jean Baptiste.
I feel like the transition from spring to fall, and it hasn't been really hard. We spent a lot of time in the offseason meeting as a group, making sure we're familiar with all the players that would be coming in the fall camp. So we were pretty much ahead of the game. So I feel like it's not a very hard transition for the guys on the defense. I feel like, the transfers, we are a bunch of veteran guys. So we all have a lot of snaps under our belt. So I wouldn't say it's very challenging. Being able to communicate on the defense side of the ball makes things a lot smoother. So us being veterans, I feel like it's not as challenging as it would be for, the incoming guys who got to get used to communicating as one. There's never a perfect player. There's always things you can improve on, man. Something I would say I would improve on is just being able to tackle and be more efficient in communicating with the other guys in the back end and in front.
Yeah, that's Jean Baptiste. You can tell it's a very mature guy. And the more I think about it, the maturity of these players, especially on defense, that's probably a good thing whenever you're dealing with a Pete Golding system. You're not having to go back to A1 of learning how to play football, essentially, to learn how to play this scheme. You have players that are from similar type defenses that have been played over the years so people can do the things that he wants to do. And what I mean by that, Pete Golding is going to be a primarily, I think, man-free type coach to where cornerbacks are going to play a lot of man coverage. So you needed somebody that can lock it up and you need it length and things like that. Now, you have somebody that's an excellent cover, and I think cover guy and DeAndre Prince will fill that void. But you also have like Zamari Walton, and you have safeties like John Saunders and Deshaun Gaddy that can man up and lock up that maybe weren't the type players that Ole Miss had before. So through the transfer portal, Pete Golding has looked at it after a spring is like, yes, we need to get better here. We need to get better there. We need to get better there. And do not forget, he's been at Alabama for 5 years. He knows what it's supposed to look like. So after spring practice, if it didn't look like that, he was quick to make changes about that. And these transfers coming in have really helped. Now, our last interview was with Ladarius Tennison, who I forget which side it was, said that he had been taking snaps at linebacker. Now, that happens. There's always some moving around during camp and things like that. But this was a box safety last year. We went over and beyond to describe what a box safety was and how it was different than a normal safety. A box safety in this defense will be synonymous with either the Husky type safety or the outside linebacker, and playing linebacker will be important. So with him moving down a little bit, we can see exactly how that goes. But this is Ladarius Tennison.
Real easy. Actually, just coming from a different school and different coaches, just being in different schemes kind of helped me a lot. Just recognizing different things, just understanding coverage and just fits. He's going to be a great athlete, a great player. He's going to be the next leader on this team. He's flying around. He's just learning the scheme. He's going to be great. I like everything. The coverage, you get into the quarterback, you just everything is fitting in the box. You get your one-on-ones with the receivers. I just love everything about it, honestly. Just trying to get better every day. Just take day by day. Just learning.
Yeah, Ladarius Tennison, I really like it whenever he speaks to the media and does that. He does a really good job. He did talk about how both of him and Jeremiah Jean Baptiste talked about how Suntarine Perkins, he's going to be the next man up on this team. And they're similar to if you're an old head and you can remember when Patrick Willis was a true freshman at Ole Miss, there was a coaches show thing where they went fishing with a coach with, I think, one of the defensive linemen, I forget his name. It may have been Jamie Mitchell. It may have been Jesse Mitchell. But he talked about, hey, which freshman are you interested in? And he just lit up and started talking about Patrick. And that's how you knew Patrick was going to be a dude. I get a lot of that about Suntarine from Ole Miss defensive players at the moment. It'll be real interesting to see that for sure. Now, I do want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Now, when we come back, we're going to do a breakdown of SanFrisco Magee, and we are going to look at his profile and things like that. And we're going to do some viewer mail, and specifically, I'm going to talk about should Keith Carter get rid of the Grove barricade and open it up a little bit and get past the COVID stuff that they did. We're going to talk about that. But first, I do want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified jobs and candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. We're all completely aware of how to create a social media profile at this point. We're 20 years in at this point. Everybody knows how to do that. But if you do that at LinkedIn, you can add a purple hashtag hiring frame to your profile and let people know that your company is hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Every dayers, we are going to continue to work through fall camp moving forward. We got John Macon Gillespie is going to stop by and talk about fall camp a little bit. Our normal interviews are going to happen. We're going to try and find some unique perspectives that we can give you about Ole Miss fall camp, so you're not just listening to me. Other people and their opinions about what is going on, and we'll see exactly what they say. But it's pretty good. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All right, SanFrisco Magee committed to Ole Miss, and we're doing a breakdown now. We've already talked about Jam Griffin. We've already talked about Dylan Hipp, who has also committed over the last 72 hours, but not SanFrisco Magee. And that's not really a slight towards SanFrisco. He was just always planned to be on this Monday show. And when other players started to pop up and commit, they took the earlier segments. We did Jam Griffin early because he's a player that is coming in for this year's team. And then Dylan Hipp, it was just on the weekend and by himself, and we was able to plan for that. But SanFrisco, after he committed, we were able to say, okay, we need to do this. And I really like this football player. As we know, I usually like football players that commit to Ole Miss football. He's a 3-star. He's rated as the consensus number 26 player in Mississippi, number 24. He's the number roughly 100 wide receiver out there. And if you look at those numbers, there's reasons like, well, why would you be like very fired up about what's going on? And the thing that you notice whenever you look at his highlights, and let's go ahead and get to that right now. My video froze up for a second, but what you have is an athletic receiver that is very smooth running routes. He plays at Macomb. They were my rivals in high school. And Macomb and South Pike were playoff teams that I played pretty consistently. And whenever you look at what they had, it's like, all right, I remember honestly after a playoff game, I guess it was coming back from South Pike and we were on 55 South. There was a tornado in front of us and a tornado behind us, like a mile each direction. So that was interesting and something I'll never forget. But I'm not sure if Macomb had Donnie Ashley or if they had another running back, but both of them went to Mississippi State. I always will seem to remember that. But you have a wide receiver that real similar to Aiden Williams is really good with his hands. He's extremely smooth. And if you've watched him run side to side, you can pick up exactly what he's doing. He's really good. And I think that maybe a lack of a big-time quarterback has kind of held SanFrisco back. And I don't know that for a fact, but that's kind of an opinion piece that I have at the moment. Good football player. He just really is. I know rankings, I know stars, and I know all of that stuff, but I also know a good football player when I see it. And this is somebody that returns kicks. He plays wide receiver. They throw in the ball out in space. He's somebody that they need, whenever need 3 yards, he's the guy that gets the call. He is the dude, the alpha on that football team. And knowing that, getting to college, maybe he'll have a chance to season a little bit once he gets up to Ole Miss. I think he runs plenty well enough. His side to side and his lateral movement's good. His hands are fine. He's a fairly physical wide receiver at 6'3". He obviously has the size to do what needs to be done. And I just welcome this kid to the Ole Miss football team. Normally the preview monitor that I look at whenever I talk about these highlights is playing in the background and locked up before this one. So I had to do it basically off of memory. So this breakdown might not be as precise as it could have been, but he's a good football player. He's worth the scholarship. He's definitely a get by Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss coaching staff. With this wide receiver unit, it will be interesting. Now, we know multiple things about this Ole Miss team. One, if Lane Kiffin sees you're over the red line, he recruits over it. He does not under it. And it does not matter if you're in the transfer portal, high school recruiting, JUCO recruiting, even in Canada. He will go get you if he thinks you can play. So whenever people say trust the coaches, they mean that in a derogatory thing somehow. But this is a situation that's the case. Lane Kiffin went and found 2 players in Canada, Tavius Robinson and Dean Leonard, and both of them are playing in the league right now. So trust the coaches to find the right necessarily thing. Now, recruiting services like Rivals and 247 and On3, they are overworked with the advent of the transfer portal. So 5 years ago, while it would be difficult for players to fall between the cracks, now it's a little bit more likely because people are stretched more thin because of how much work is going on in the transfer portal. This player has a chance to be a really good player. He's built right. He has the right frame, athleticism, movement, and hands. He plays fairly physical. I think he will be a good football player, honestly. Anyway, when we come back, we will get to our viewer mail segment and talk about, should Keith Carter remove the barricades from the Grove? This is a question that's on everybody's mind. So, Keith, if you're listening, we're going to get into that in just a second. So stick around. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Every dayers this week, we will have John Macon Gillespie, and we will look at interviews to add context to Ole Miss football and fall camp moving forward. And if anything happens in basketball, we'll talk about that as well. But we're going to be here for you to try and make fall camp as fun as humanly freaking possible. That is the goal. Anyway, your team every day, Ole Miss every day. Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and we have gotten to our viewer mail segment. Now, This is the real question that everybody wants to know. Is Keith Carter going to revert the Walk of Champions back to what it used to be and not so sterilized with the fencing up? This is a really good question because I could honestly talk myself into both things. Now, the first thing is like Keith Carter just wants to avoid COVID. And so he will eventually remove the Walk of Champions barricades so that you are closer to the players. But the flip side of that is, I think Lane Kiffin is a little bit of an introvert. And I think they like the fact that fans are separated from the team to where Juice Kiffin and all that can walk down the sidewalk. So I do not think that Keith Carter is going to remove that fencing. That said, the fencing should absolutely be removed. When Ole Miss was rolling and everything was fun and the Walk of Champions was what it was meant to be, fans were an arm's length of their favorite players and their heroes. And Whiskey Alley, I think, or Rebel Alley or whatever it's called, was down towards the end and was chest bumping coaches as it went by. And it was extremely fun. It was what we want from our college football experience, that extra ambiance that prevents the Grove from being like Harvard, Yale with chandeliers up and people acting all high and mighty and stuff like that. It's the stuff that grounds the Grove and allows it to be that special thing that is for the 5-year-old that is going to his first Ole Miss game, the 55-year-old who has been coming here for 40 years, the 20-year-old college student. All of them can have a similar experience in the Grove. And with Oklahoma coming in 2024, we need to get back to what we did. I love the Grove. I'm not a person that likes large numbers of people, okay? If I go to Walmart is like my nightmare. I do not like, I get claustrophobic when a ton of people are around. But when I go to Oxford and when I go to Oxford, no matter how crowded it is, even when I was there in the 2012 Ole Miss Texas game, when 200,000 people were in Oxford that day, I went to the Grove and I forced myself to go through it because the atmosphere and the ambiance was worth it. It was really, really cool to hear the band warm up and all of that stuff. The Grove is a special, special place. And whenever you put barricades and things like up that limits what the Grove can be, it actually makes it a lesser experience for everybody involved. So yes, I think that Keith Carter should revert the Walk of Champions back to what it used to be, especially now that all of the extra stuff and it goes all the way to the stadium. Now, that was really cool, and that was from Beham Rev from our Discord server. Now, Cody Camp from our Discord server had a question. Due to the inefficiency in the red zone last season, what will be the new offensive approach in the red zone? Is trig the answer or a double tight end set? And A, I would say yes for both of them. B, I'd say yes. But I talked yesterday in a Dylan Hip video, and I had a comment that wanting me to explain this a little bit. And I think positional versatility will be important for the Ole Miss offense this season, and specifically in the red zone. Whether you have 10 personnel, which is one back, no tight ends, that'd be 4 wide receivers. 11 personnel, which is our standard thing with a tight end and a running back. 12 personnel, running back, 2 tight ends. All of those things. You can even have 2 running backs, no tight ends. But if you run the offense in the same place and the same formations as you normally do, you have 4 different ways to run the same exact thing. Whether you have Michael Trigg at tight end, or Ulysses Bentley the 4th at tight end, or Caden Priestcorn, or Jordan Watkins, or Quinshon Judkins, you can run the same plays and the same formations, but the defense will be at a disadvantage because they set the defense and the defensive calls off of personnel groupings. There's people that are always looking to see who we insert into the ball game. That's what that always happens. They will call out at the beginning. You're in 11 personnel. You're in 10 personnel. You're in 12 personnel. This is what you're going against. That positional versatility and running the same stuff is going to allow our simple offense, in my opinion, because we do run a simple offense, to be a little bit more versatile and to allow us to surprise a defense to where they can't pigeonhole us like they did at the end of last season. Last season, it was absolutely all 11 personnel. They knew that when Quinshawn was in the game, he was going to get the ball 3 out of 4 times. We need a way to make the linebackers think. And positional versatility will allow us to force the linebackers to think. It was one of the reasons I wanted us to do 12 personnel this year. It was just a form of positional versatility with Michael Trigg out in the slot, a little bit of size out there. Maybe you have Hudson Wolf out there. Maybe you have Kyron Heath. Maybe it's Javante Connor. I'm not 100% sure. But this isn't a 100% Michael Trigg discussion. That positional versatility will force defenders to think a little bit. There'll be a half step too slow, and with the jet motion, with the tight end usage, with the usage right behind them, all of a sudden they don't know whether to go left, they go right, to go back, to go forward. That's going to make Quinshawn more effective. That's going to make the passing game more effective, and it's going to allow the bigger plays to develop. So I'm pretty excited about that. Now, I do want to let you know one more time, this is open enrollment, limited time for this month in our Discord server. It's our private message board, or it will be September 1st. You can join that now, talk about what's going on. And we also have a super private message board for people that prove themselves in the message board. It's like an inception to where you join and you can go in there and talk about anything that is going on. It's pretty cool indeed. So it works like a message board. It works like a chat room, but you can thread it. It's a little bit intimidating at first, but if you stick with it, it will be well worth your time. I love the Discord server now, and it is coming along really nicely. I'm really fired up about what this all has become. We had nearly 10,000 views on YouTube over the weekend. We were ranked on the iTunes charts all weekend. That is because of you and coming in here and making this an incredibly fun experience. And that Discord server that we were just talking about is part of making this a fun experience. We got moderators on there. It's 0 tolerance, by the way. It is 0 tolerance. So if you're messing up, they will boot you out. They're not going to ask questions. They're not going to warn you. They're going to get rid of you. And we're going to work to have a nice private message board as well. Now, if the invite link expires, DM me. I'll send you a new link and you can join that way. So that is pretty cool indeed. Anyway, it's Monday morning. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. So subscribe there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, Ole Miss, every day. It is really cool that I've become the Ole Miss morning show, and so many people are just enjoying this broadcast with their morning coffee. That stuff makes me really, really happy. This shirt and the last 3 shirts I've worn on these shows have been sent to me by the Grove Collective. I do want to thank Walker Jones for that, and I want to thank the entire Grove Collective staff for that. But you can get this shirt if you like it. And whenever I wear a Grove Collective shirt on the air, they are on their shop, and the revenue that comes in, it helps the NIL track as well. So that's a way that you can help and get like a really cool, this is a really comfortable quarter zip. And so I'm pretty fired up about that. But thank you very much for tuning in. Full pads. We're ready. Fall camp. We have Lane Kiffin and players for tomorrow's show. Should be a lot of fun. Anyway, stick around, or hotty toddy.